You don't need an expensive fusing kiln like this one to melt glass. Okay, well you do if you need it for big stuff, but for little stuff like jewelry, beads, buttons, etc., you can use just a standard microwave. Believe it or not, this little microwave kiln gets hot enough to melt glass. Glass fuses at 1500 degrees Fahrenheit or 810 C. Heck, this little thing can also bake small ceramics. It takes longer, but raku clay fires at 1850 Fahrenheit-ish. And we've done this too. If you're interested, here's a link to that video above. Now, the way these things actually work is really fascinating. There's not much details online of how these are actually made, since a lot of it is trade secrets, but from what I can decipher, the white insulative exterior shell is likely made from an alumina product that helps keep the heat inside, while the dark gray layer on the inside is what's called a susceptor material, which is a fancy term for materials that absorb microwave energy. Things like water, oils, and fats, stuff you would normally put in a microwave, are susceptor materials, but also things like graphite, magnetite, and iron oxides are also susceptor materials. And that's probably what this black material is. Now you might be thinking, oh, since I don't need PPE to microwave my TV dinners, I don't need protection when doing the same thing to molten glass. Well, you're wrong. Of course, always wear safety glasses, gloves or tongs, or gloves and tongs. And we also recommend using a microwave that you do not particularly care about or use often for food-related items. We're personally willing to take that risk just for us, for our regular microwave for this, but that is not something that we recommend for you. Another thing worth considering is there is a chance that you may overheat your microwave if you do this, especially if you're using this kiln for ceramics instead of glass. When we were playing around with ceramics in this kiln, we did it for way too long at some point and ran it for, I think, basically 2 hours consecutively straight, and it overheated way too much and actually shut the whole thing down. Luckily for us, when it cooled back down, it did turn back on for us, which we were very lucky for that, but definitely something to watch out for, and just keep an eye on how hot the microwave is getting. Again, this is not something that you probably have to worry about if you're doing just a few pieces of fused glass here and there. But if you're doing something like non-stop production glass, you might just want to take a minute here and there and let the microwave cool down to its normal room temperature, or just get an actual kiln. Before we get started, I want to ask y'all to subscribe to our channel. We just recently got monetized, which is beyond exciting. Our goal is to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you think that we can do it, let us know by subscribing.
And now on to the fun stuff. These little guys are called marini. These are bits of glass that are kind of patterned in a tube shape and then chopped up into itty bitty little slices of the pattern. We still have these ones that came with the kiln, but you can get these online fairly easily as well. These here are really, really thin pieces of glass called confetti glass, brightly colored, just kind of fun to play with, and pieces that we can kind of easily chop into teeny tiny little bits. And then this is just called frit. This is fairly large frit. Sometimes it's not circular in shape, but it's just big pieces of colored glass. So these will melt down and smooth as they melt into little spheres. And then we just have some like mosaic stained glass stuff, and this stuff did not come with the kiln. So technically some of it might not be fusible glass, so it's kind of trial and error. As you'll see later, some of this stuff just doesn't like to fuse in a kiln. So we use a 1,000-watt microwave for this. You can use one that's slightly more powerful or less powerful, but your times will be different. So I always start by laying down a sheet of kiln paper. This is because the white material that the kiln is made out of the glass will stick to it and melt through it and ruin it. So always use a piece of kiln paper. It's pretty cheap. Just get some of that. And then you kind of just start laying your glass out and, look for a shape that sort of makes sense to you. I don't know, use your design intuition here. So I started with some thicker glass, and then I'm laying on some of that fine confetti glass just to kind of hold things together, though everything will stick together if it's close enough. It should be fine. But just kind of to visually stitch the two colors together. And then you just throw on the kiln lid and move it to the microwave. Make sure when you're moving it to the microwave that you haven't jostled the pieces in there, because again, if that glass touches the side of the kiln, it will melt and stick and make an absolute mess. So again, mess with your kiln times and just kind of check If the glass is glowing and kind of rounded off, that's what you're looking for. You don't want it to get so hot that it kind of beads up into one big blob or starts to melt even further and kind of run, but you definitely want it hot enough so that the edges round off and that sort of thing. You can kind of peek in there, but you definitely want to keep the top of the kiln on while it cools for about 30 minutes. Always be careful when going in there and touching because it could still be hot after 30 minutes, but that seems to be a good time for us. Sometimes this kiln paper does stick a little bit, but usually you can rub it off fairly easily from the back of the glass. And the back of the piece is always going to need a little bit of cleaning up. And as you can see, the edges have rounded, the pieces have all kind of come together as one, and there's no risk of this coming apart or anything. It is fused, properly fused. So now we're just gonna experiment with some other shapes and colors and patterns, and we are going for some like pendant-y sort of things, or like earrings. So Brad here is using some Marini, which again, the pattern stays fairly well if you put it down in the right way, and you're able to kind of get that cool like star-shaped pattern from the Marini, and that will show up in the final result. Sometimes it morphs a little bit, but the star shape turns out pretty well here, and that's going to make an amazing necklace, pendant, or something. And here you can see what happens if the glass gets over the edge and touches the edge of the kiln. It starts to eat into the surface of that white material, and you kind of have to like hack it out and scoop it out, and luckily it did not ruin the kiln for us, but it was very nearly there. Next, we're going to make a couple of paired pieces. I'm kind of grabbing shapes that are similar in size and shape, and I'm going to try to make some like matching-ish earring pieces that will at least be sisters, if not twins. Contrasting colors are great with glass. Sometimes similar colors are great too, but sometimes they kind of bleed together and it's hard to see the definition there. But definitely play around with what you're interested in, the colors. Like, it's all about trial and error and experimentation, especially with these confetti and mixed like glass types. Sometimes one red and the next red look the same, but once you fired them, they don't turn out at all the same. And sometimes they do. It's kind of just hit and miss. You can buy glass by the sheet and have more predictable results with that because you know everything's coming from the same sheet. But as you can see here, this piece of whitish glass and this piece of whitish glass look identical. But once they're fused, as you can see, they turned out to be completely different colors. You can also cut the shapes down to size or use some nippers, maybe wheel nippers rather than what we're using here, but to kind of give yourself a general shape to work with. So if you want to size a piece down or kind of nip off some of the sharp edges, go for it. Here's another trial and error piece where the colors didn't come out like we expected whatsoever. Who knew? And then here is a piece that was not supposed to be fused. So this again was from that assorted glass selection, so this is definitely a non-fusible glass, and that's kind of why it burst open. I don't know if that's because of the bubbles or because of the glass type, but thankfully I heard it pop and was able to grab it out really quick, so none of the glass really stuck too bad to the side of the kiln, and again, we didn't ruin anything. So keep an ear out for those little pops, just in case. So this is how some of these turned out. Again, we were just kind of playing around, experimenting, and seeing if we could make some cool kind of abstract-y looking pieces. We really loved this one. The bright colors contrast really well, and it's kind of cool. You can see some of the crackles within the blue glass. That's because of how it cooled down and temperature differentials and all that sort of fun stuff. And here's what we did today. Super fun project. Took us a couple of hours, but again, we're waiting 30 minutes between each for them to cool down. So very low maintenance, kind of come back to it sort of craft. We really, really enjoy it and love it. And this pair of earrings turned out really well. The pendant with that Marini star again, that was really beautiful. And then Brad took a while to put this one together, but we think it turned out absolutely stunning. Again, another pair of earrings. And those kind of abstract-y pieces that will be great necklace, charm, pendant things. Very excited to get these put together and into necklaces. Next, we're going to pull out our special diamond tip drill bits and try to pop some holes in these babies. These are specifically designed to cut into things like glass or stone or tile and that sort of thing. There's teeny tiny little diamonds on here that should scratch away the surface slowly and pop a hole in there for us. You also want to use lots of water. We're going to be doing this one submerged, but lots of water helps create smaller cracks in the glass that prevent it from kind of shattering and coming apart like you think of glass doing. Just think of those videos where you use scissors underwater and you can cut glass fairly easily. Same concept. So we're starting by drilling into the back of the pieces. There's kind of a texture on the back of these pieces, so the drill bit kind of catches better and we don't risk scuffing up the surface too much when we start on the back. And you gotta take your time with these drill bits. It's not like a regular wood drill bit. You gotta go really slow with it. And you start small and then you kind of work up to larger drill bit sizes. So we started with a teeny tiny one and then we tried to do a larger one on this one. And going from the back, we created like a teeny tiny little shatter on the front. So there's just like a little nick that came off. So next, we're going to start again from the back with that small drill bit and break it. And we're not sure what happened here. This piece resisted being cut. Sometimes the glass temper might be the problem here, or if you push too hard, you might break it, or you try to rush it. There's lots of factors going into this. Glass is notoriously hard to break in a controlled way. So we had a couple failed attempts here, as you'll see in a moment. This one shattered, unfortunately. It was one of our favorite pieces, but it kind of broke apart. So we might try refusing that piece back together, just kind of putting the two broken pieces side by side in that kiln again and seeing if they'll stick together in the microwave. This one turned out beautifully. We did a hole from the back and then a larger hole from the front, and it worked perfectly. So we're just going to wrap up a couple of these with some wire to make them into pendants, and also we're going to use some that were too small or we didn't want to risk breaking, and we're just going to glue some earring backs onto these. We did a little bit of research and found that epoxy works as a pretty decent glue for glass, because we've glued glass with other glues in the past and have had trouble with things kind of coming off and not sticking. So hopefully this sticks pretty well. That textured back definitely will help as well, so the glue should stick pretty well. And this is how they turned out. We're super happy with them. If you enjoyed this project and want to give it a try for yourself, we've included an affiliate link below for the kiln and a couple of other things. If you want to try and grab that kiln, use that link and it'll support us and support what we do. As always, like, subscribe, and see y'all next time. Bye!